Have you ever read a story so terrifying that it felt real? What if I told you there's a book out there that doesn't just feel real, but actually becomes your reality? Today, we're diving into The Legend of a Cursed Book, a horror story so powerful, it rewrites the world around whoever dares to read its final page. This isn't just some campfire tale or a creepypasta that's been passed around online. This story, known only as The Last Page, has been whispered about for centuries. A phantom book with no known author and no traceable origin. It's said to be a simple, unassuming volume bound in worn leather with no title on the cover. It could be sitting on a dusty shelf in a secondhand bookstore right now, or hidden away in an attic, waiting for its next victim. The legend goes like this. The book contains a collection of unsettling short stories. Each one is a masterclass in psychological dread, tapping into our deepest, most primal fears. Fear of the dark, fear of being watched, fear of what lurks just beyond our senses. People who have supposedly found the book describe the experience of reading it as hypnotic. The prose is so compelling, so beautifully crafted, that you can't put it down, even when every instinct is screaming at you to stop. But it's the final story, the one that gives the book its infamous name, that holds the real power. This story is always different. It's personalized. It's about you. It describes your surroundings with chilling accuracy, details your most secret thoughts and anxieties, and then it describes what's going to happen next. It builds the tension, moment by agonizing moment, leading up to a single, terrifying event. And then you reach the last page, a page that's always blank. But as you stare at it, words begin to appear, forming sentences as if written by an invisible hand. And these words don't just tell a story, they seal your fate. What is written on that final page becomes true instantly. Let's talk about some of the accounts. One of the earliest tales dates back to the 18th century, involving a scholar named Elias Vance. He was a man of logic, a skeptic who scoffed at superstition. He claimed to have found the book in a forgotten corner of a European library. He read it as a curiosity, amused by its macabre tales. According to his journal, which was later found, he reached the final story late one night in his study. The story described him perfectly, sitting at his desk, the flickering candlelight, the storm raging outside. It described his growing unease, his heart pounding in his chest. When he got to the last page, the words that materialized supposedly read, and as he read these words, a shadow in the corner of the room took a step forward. Elias Vance was never seen again. His study was found in disarray, the window shattered, and the book was gone. All that remained was his journal, open to the final, frantic entry. Fast forward to the modern era, the internet age. In the early 2000s, a user on a deep web forum posted about finding a strange old book at a flea market. They chronicled their experience reading it over several days. Their posts grew increasingly paranoid. They talked about how the final story was describing their apartment, their pet cat, the creaks and groans of their building. Their last post was a garbled, terrified message. They said they were turning to the last page. Then silence. Their account went inactive and was never heard from again. So, what is this book? Is it a supernatural artifact? A tool of some malevolent entity? Some theories suggest it's a form of tulpa, a concept from Tibetan mysticism where an object can be given a life of its own through intense collective belief. For centuries, people have feared this book, talked about it, believed in its power. Perhaps all that focused energy, all that fear, has actually made it real. Another theory, one that's a bit more psychological, is that the book is a catalyst for psychosis. The stories are designed to be so unsettling that they break down the reader's perception of reality. You become so immersed, so suggestible, that your own mind fills in the blanks. When you get to that final empty page, your terrified brain projects its worst fears onto it, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. You believe so strongly that the shadow is moving that you have a full-blown psychotic break. You don't see a shadow move. You just believe it did so intensely that your reality shatters. But that doesn't explain the disappearances. It doesn't explain how the book itself seems to vanish after each incident, only to reappear years later, somewhere else entirely. It's almost as if the book itself is a predator, and the stories are its lure. It chooses its reader, draws them in, and once it has fed on their fear, it moves on to find its next meal. Think about the ultimate horror. It's not a monster you can see or a killer you can fight. It's the loss of control, the loss of agency. The book, the last page, represents this perfectly. It takes your own life, your own reality, and turns it into a horror story where you are the main character, but you have no control over the ending. The author is some unseen, malevolent force, and you are just a puppet in its narrative. The scariest part? The story always ends on that last page. There's no epilogue, no sequel. For the reader, it's game over. The book writes your ending, and then it closes, trapping you within its final terrible sentence forever. So let's just say, hypothetically, you found this book. You've read through the captivating, terrifying stories. You're at the final chapter, and it's describing you right now watching this video. It describes the light from your screen illuminating your face, the sound of my voice in your ears. It knows you're feeling a mix of skepticism and a tiny, creeping thrill of fear. You turn the page, and it's blank. What would you want it to say? Or, more importantly, what would you be terrified of it saying? Perhaps the words would be simple, and then they heard a soft knock on the door. Or maybe a face appeared in the window behind them. The power of the book is that it doesn't need elaborate monsters. It uses your own environment, your own imagination against you. It turns the familiar into the terrifying. The legend of the last page serves as a powerful cautionary tale. It's about the danger of curiosity, the allure of the forbidden, and the fine line between fiction and reality. It reminds us that some doors are best left unopened and some stories are best left unread. So next time you're browsing a dusty old bookstore and you come across a plain leather-bound book with no title, maybe just leave it on the shelf. Because you never know. You might just be picking up your own final chapter. And once you start reading, you won't be able to stop until you reach the very last terrifying page. Thanks for joining me on this dive into the unknown. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for Tales from the Shadows. Let me know in the comments what you think is the scariest possible thing that could be written on that final page. Stay curious, stay safe, and maybe stick to paperbacks with the author's name on them. See you next time.